All right, hi everybody. So my name's EG. I'm one of the co-founders of Infura. If you're not familiar with Infura is blockchain infrastructure. We provide APIs and other tools for people to develop for Web3. When you look around what's going on at ETH Denver today, it's so different from 2 years ago and the very first ETH Denver. People are more interested in what's built on top of the core protocols. People are interested about NFTs, NFT platforms, all of the different things that we can do in the DeFi space. And it's easy to forget all of the things that are underneath that, all of the things that underpin that with the base layer. The base layer being the consensus layer that ties all of this together. So initially that was just Ethereum, and then we added IPFS. We've added other layer 1 and layer 2 protocols. And all of these things are peer-to-peer networks. And to be able to participate in this, you typically had to run your own infrastructure. When it was just Bitcoin, there was one thing that we were all doing. It was sending transactions, and it was really straightforward. We ran our own infrastructure. We ran a node, typically something like this at home, and we would just send transactions back and forth. And that changed over time because as the resources that are required for that grew, the infrastructure that we had to run for that changed. But people weren't really too concerned about that. People were more interested about transaction throughput and the things that you could do on the network rather than the boring thing, which was the infrastructure. So when Ethereum came onto the scene, people started using it the same way initially. We were just sending transactions, but it's because nothing had been built yet. There were no NFTs. There was nothing really ready in DeFi to play with. We were all just kind of doing things that were interesting, things that we could use Ethereum for, like buying a pixel on a website and say that we owned it on the blockchain. And it was difficult to introduce new people to the space when, if they were not very technical, they had to run their own infrastructure. And so working at Consensus, our goal was make it as easy as possible for people to enter the Ethereum and Web3 space. Make it as simple as possible for them to get onboarded. And so the people at MetaMask had the great idea of creating the Chrome extension, the experience that we're all familiar with. And when they came to us, we were a couple of people within Consensus with this idea of trying to run the backend for that. Because if you're not running your own node, you need somebody to run that for you and be that connection to the blockchain. And so MetaMask did that. MetaMask removed the ability, or MetaMask removed the MetaMask removed the requirement of having to run your own node and made it that anybody could just immediately install this, have a wallet, and immediately transact on the Ethereum network. First, we started with MetaMask, and then about 3 months later, we did this for the rest of the Ethereum ecosystem. We opened it up and made it so that anybody could immediately sign up and build applications that would enable their users to transact on Ethereum and no longer have to have that infrastructure component. This started with our Ethereum API. We launched our Ethereum API first, and you just had to sign up, get your API key, and immediately start consuming data from the blockchain. You were able to interact with any of the applications that you wanted to, send transactions, and not have to worry about keeping that server online. But you couldn't do that without also having a decentralized storage component. A lot of these applications weren't just transacting. They were starting to store data, whether it was metadata for an application or an actual image or some other asset that was important for whatever they were building. They were starting to store it on IPFS because IPFS had the promise of being a decentralized storage network that would eventually tie into this promise of what Filecoin and Filecoin storage would become. So we started with those two things. We said we were going to enable IPFS APIs and gateways and deliver Ethereum gateways so that people could immediately start building. That was the start of infrastructure for Ethereum, and that was our product suite. And then as people started interacting with the APIs, it was very clear that trying to build a product for blockchain had this additional component that we hadn't really foreseen that would become a significant part of the problem space that we would have to solve. And that was the transaction pools. Transaction pools are when we send transactions on any of these blockchains that they're not instant. They're not instantaneously written to the blockchain, that they sit there for a while, and depending on the gas fees, depending on the conditions of the network, it takes a while for these to get included into the next blocks. And so people wanted to understand that information. They wanted to see more of that information and use that to better inform what they're doing on chain, whether as developers or as users. And so we always wanted to solve problems for our users. And so we developed this thing called ITX, which is Infura Transactions. When you think about the complexity of how you set your transaction fee, depending on your comfort level with Ethereum tooling and your understanding of the core protocols, this might be intimidating or it might not. Some people really understand if the network is really busy, how you send a transaction to get it included within a certain amount of time. But if you're not, it's extremely difficult, and that'll continue to be a high point of friction for new users coming into this space. So a couple of our early partners asked us to develop something like ITX. What ITX does is acts as a gas tank that enables people that are using Ethereum to not have to worry about the transaction fees. Basically, the transaction fees are paid for by this gas tank that's funded ahead of time by another user. And that user can pay for the transactions of the applications that they're trying to deploy. So for instance, if you're deploying an NFT marketplace, you could fund a gas tank for your marketplace, make it so that people can transact and have that gas experience abstracted away from your end users. And you can build that into your model another way and not force that user experience onto a new user that's entering the space, just trying to claim an NFT and trying to understand what this gas fee is for. So that's what it's about. We wanted you, just like you outsourced your infrastructure and API data requirements to us, be able to outsource that complexity of gas to us as well. This is another use case that was interesting that came to us from a couple of our partners, which is some entities wanted to participate in public blockchains, no longer wanted to just sit in a private permission chain. And they wanted to do that, but they had requirements that meant that they couldn't touch Ethereum, or they couldn't touch another asset on the Ethereum chain. But they needed to transact to coordinate with other people on the network. So they were using Ethereum more as a coordination layer and not really looking at it for value transfer. But to be able to participate on the network, you need to pay the transaction fees. And so we came up with a model where they can basically subscribe to a service with us that allows them to use this ITX service and transact on the network for a consistent fee, regardless of the dynamics of the fee market. This is really about building additional layers of infrastructure beyond IPFS and Ethereum APIs. It's what I've been talking about when we go to these conferences, talking about how to deliver this data to our end users. But applications have become more complex. They need data about the pending transactions, and they need data outside of just the core blockchain constructs. And so we're starting to focus more on these additional components that are built on top of our core APIs, like ITX. And so I'll do a quick demo here from my colleague Mark, going through some of the connectors that we're going to be releasing at Infura that you can then start to use in your own applications. There we go. So this is the consensus connector that Mark demoed earlier this week. It really is a low-code, no-code solution. So here he's using Adobe Creative Cloud to upload some assets. And what he's going to be able to do here is create some NFTs without having to actually write any Solidity, deploy any contracts like with code. This is all using the Azure Power App Suite. Let me pause it right here really quick so I can kind of walk you through slowly. So once the asset's added, there's a couple of different steps that you can go through here, and none of this requires code. All of this is basically drag and drop and configure right in the UI, so that anybody that wants to build an NFT, mint an NFT, deploy these applications, doesn't have to spend as many hours as some of us did early on just trying to get something delivered. You can get something to market a lot quicker and be able to serve your users and then iterate on your design. This next demo here is going to be Mark publishing an NFT directly from his camera. One second. All right, there's Mark. So just like with the previous demo, nothing here requires code. It's all configuration through Power Apps. And the thing that I wanted to make clear here is to do anything on the blockchain, you still need that blockchain connection that I was talking about earlier. So this one's something that we partnered with Microsoft to build. It's powered by Infura. That Infura provides that blockchain connection so that it's now abstracted away. You don't need to worry about these API queries. This is all happening under the hood. And then now we've published this NFT. And I think anybody in this room should be able to just come by, see a demo of this, and immediately try doing it yourself. So we're going to be releasing more of these types of connectors. This is just one of the most popular ones that we wanted to be able to show to you. And so kind of transitioning a little bit, all of these applications that we're building are continuing to put more load on these networks. You can't just build these and not see an impact on the underlying base layer. And what that means is transaction throughput. That's why we're all really interested in Ethereum 2 and the Layer 2 protocols and other blockchains that are promising higher throughput, because the more that we're trying to do on-chain, the more capacity and throughput there needs to be for us. And one of the things that people don't talk about is the state growth. There's a lot of research around stateless clients, light clients, things like that. But at the core, whenever you're sending a transaction on chain, there will always be some small amount of data that's going to be written to the database. And so that's going to grow indefinitely. Maybe your blockchain is going to have an issue a year from now. Maybe some aren't going to have that issue 10 years from now. But it's a problem that the space is working on solving, and it will get solved. But the thing is, how will it affect your application when you deploy your application to production, and then all of a sudden your QR code goes viral and a million people download it and try transacting? How will your app react? How will the chain underneath it react? And one of the things is it becomes more and more difficult to run these this infrastructure because the database just gets so heavy. So we're starting to spread transactions around other chains. These are the ones that we've worked with at Infura. So we support not just Ethereum, but Polygon, Optimism, the Arbitrum rollups, and we're looking at adding the Starknet and a couple of other L1s in the near future. But all of these chains have the exact same problem, that they're all going to grow, and the faster chains grow faster, and there's no getting around that. And so if you follow crypto Twitter, you probably saw an article from Moxie, the creator of Signal, a few weeks ago or a month ago. And he was highlighting this as an issue. Like, how can we call ourselves a decentralized community when so many of these projects rely on Infura and MetaMask as the core places where they interact with the network? And there is some truth to that. There are a lot of applications that use Infura, but there's a key distinction between dependence and utilization. A lot of these applications utilize Infura and utilize MetaMask, but the thing that we wanted to do was make it as easy as possible for people to enter into the Web3 space and build. We had no intention of trying to lock people into just using our services. So in MetaMask, you're able to use your own infrastructure. You're able to use an alternative service to Infura if you want to. And as Infura, when we started out, there were other APIs that were already available that were honestly a lot easier to run because they were traditional RESTful APIs rather than the Ethereum JSON RPC, which is admittedly very difficult to manage sometimes. But we wanted to offer a service that used an open API specification. And anything that you see from Infura is typically going to be an open API specification, because that's really what we believe furthers the growth and adoption of this space. If we continue to build on proprietary solutions, and there are some examples. I'm not calling out anyone in particular, but there are proprietary examples of APIs that if you build your application on top of it, you're reliant on them, and there isn't an alternative. And so it's important for us to take that into account when we're making all of our design decisions with these applications that we want to ship. And so decentralization comes in, in many different flavors. I always say that we're very pragmatic in our approach as Infura. We recognize that as a service, we're not the most decentralized service that's out there, but we've tried to balance that with being as open and collaborative as possible with the ecosystem. One of the things that we've constantly highlighted is our hybrid architecture model, where people are able to utilize Infura's APIs, but also utilize their own infrastructure and basically route requests in between them. And we've helped several large organizations set this infrastructure up for themselves so that they're using Infura as a primary and their own as a fallback, or vice versa. Web3 is about community. I mean, that's one of the main distinctions that you constantly hear about what's the difference between Web 2 and Web 3, is Web 3 is about ownership, participation, and community. And Infura has always been part of this community, but we haven't really had a lot of opportunities up until now for people to really engage with us. And that's one thing that's going to change. We really want you as the builders, you as the people that are consuming and utilizing our services, to really be able to participate in this, whether that's giving us your feedback on specific products that we already offer, or really telling us what the needs are. Because I didn't see NFTs becoming what they are today. I didn't see MEV becoming as important as it was a year ago. And I don't know what's going to be the hot topic at ETH Denver a year from now. But as developers, if we're continually talking to each other, we'll recognize what are the problems that you're trying to solve, what are the things that I'm trying to solve, and we can try to solve them together in a way that's not just trying to capture value for ourselves, but trying to solve it as a problem for the rest of the community as well. Because if we're doing that, then we're going to be able to help grow this entire ecosystem without hitting this roadblock of growth that we're going to hit because we're stuck on a particular proprietary solution. So I put the link here to our community forum, community.infura.io. We have our feature requests board over there, and we'd love if people started to more actively engage with us there and tell us exactly what you need and how we can help you. Related to that, at DevCon 5, which was the last time I traveled before the pandemic, was when we announced our open architecture initiative. And then the pandemic hit, and then plans kind of went the way they went. So I want to revive that, where our open architecture initiative was about sharing more of the details about how we run Infura. Because it's not a secret. There's certain things that anybody that's trying to scale data reads and writes to the blockchain have to solve. You have to index data. You have to be able to spin up nodes quickly. You have to have a way to keep data consistency around the APIs that you're offering. And everybody's solving these problems mostly independently and not really sharing solutions, or and especially with other chains quickly growing in popularity. They're all either in need of similar services or are already having issues because they don't have a service like Infura. And if you wonder why Infura doesn't support something like Solana or BSC, it's not that we're averse to doing that. We'd love to support developers wherever they want to deploy. The issue just comes with the scaling challenges of an organization. We're no different from any organization that has scaling challenges. And with any commitment that we make, you can be assured that if we say that we're going to support a chain or an API, it's not going to be pulled out from under you, because this is supposed to be the immutable web. This is supposed to be something that you can build something like an NFT platform on that's going to last for generations. And we don't want to offer something that we're not fully committed and prepared to operate long term. And so We're going to start with opening up some of our architecture around node management because that's what's going to be really valuable for a lot of these projects early on. And so keep an eye out, go to our website and sign up for our mailing list, and we're going to start releasing more information about that. And then we're going to continue to extend that initiative going forward. And it's important for us to do this because all of these different applications that are built on top of us depend on us. And everything from global trade to the metaverse are things that are going to be built on top of these layers. So we need to make sure that the infrastructure layers are decentralized and robust so that we're building on top of a solid base. Thanks, everybody.